Hi everyone, in this video session I would like to discuss the topic of 16-bit common bus system in computer registers. So among the registers there is a common bus system to transfer the data into the register or from the register. So as the number of wires will be excessive if connections are made between the outputs of each register and the inputs of other registers. So in order to make the inputs and outputs to one register to another registers, we need more number of wire connections. So in order to reduce those wire connections, we use this common bus system. So it make it easy to carry the common output and common input in a common bus like structure to carry the whole data from one register to the another register. So when AR or PC receive information from the bus, only the 12 least significant bits are transferred into the register. So when address register or program counter receive the information from the bus, only the 12 least significant bits are transferred into the register. So I will explain it clearly. So here the address register and program counter receive the inputs. So how they receive the inputs? Only the 12 bits will be given as inputs. Here the address register and the program counter which are of 12 bits, but this is a 16-bit common bus. So that which are in the 16-bit common bus, the least significant bits, that is 12 bits of the data, will be carried as inputs to address register and the program counter. Coming to the next one, and the input register INPR and the output register OUTR have 8 bits each and communicate with 8 least significant bits. Similarly, input register and output register, which are of 8 bits each. So they will get inputs, output register get the input of 8 least significant bits. Similarly, input register will transfer the 8 bits of data to the adders and logic circuit, which are least significant bits. Next, in input register receives a character from input device which is transferred to AC. So here input register will get the data from the user. So the data has to be transferred into the computer. So this input register gets the data from the user only. So here there is no input to the input register from the common bus system. So the input register gets the data from the user and transfers the data to the address and logic, and here from the address and logic the data will be transferred to the accumulator by enabling the load input. So and the output register receives a character from the accumulator and delivers it from the to an output device. So the data from the accumulator was sent to the common bus and the data is transferred to the output register from this common bus system. So the whole data which is in the accumulator, which has to send the output to the user, so that data is sent to the common bus and the data is sent to the output register directly from the accumulator. There is no transfer from output register to any of the other registers. So here output register doesn't give any output to the any common bus. So directly the output register gives the output to the user itself. So whereas address register, program counter, data register, accumulator, coming to the input IR, instruction register, temporary register, will get the inputs and will give the outputs to the common bus system. Next, coming to the next one, the 16 lines of common bus receive the information from the 6 registers and the memory unit. So I already said that the 6 registers, that is address register, program counter, data register, next coming to the instruction register, temporary register will and the memory unit will get the inputs and send the outputs to the common bus system. The bus lines are connected to the inputs of 6 registers and the memory, and the 5 registers have 3 control inputs: load, increment and clear signal. So five registers, that is address register, program counter, data register, accumulator, and coming to the temporary register, which has load signal and increment signal and clear signal. So load signal, which is useful for getting the input into that register and load the data from the bus to that register, and whereas coming to the increment, which is used to increment the data by enabling the load signal, and coming to the clear signal, which clears the data inside the register. And how this address register, program counter, data register, AC and input register, instruction register, temporary register and output registers get enabled. So when the value is when the selection lines, here the selection lines used to select the which register has to send the output to the common bus. So when the selection line is 0, no register is called. When the value is 1, address register is called. When the value is 2, program counter is called. And here in this pin diagram, it is represented very clearly. When the load signal is 1, that is the selection line is 1, so address register gets the output and the output is transferred to the bus. Here in this way, the remaining registers also send their outputs to the common bus system, and the data is transferred to the required register where the data has to be transferred. The input data and the output data of a memory are connected to the common bus. Here the input data of the memory and the output data of the memory unit are connected to the common bus, but the memory address is connected to the address register. Here the memory address is connected to the address register. Therefore address register must always be used to specify the memory address. So as we discussed, that address register used to specify the memory address where the operand location is present inside the memory. So address register is always used to specify the memory address. Next point is, any register can receive the data from memory after a read operation except an accumulator. Any register can get the data from the memory, but the accumulator doesn't get the input from the memory, since because the accumulator gets the input from the INPR and from the accumulator itself and from the output of the data register. So the accumulator doesn't get the input from the memory, so there is no necessity of memory for the accumulator for getting the input. Next, the 16 inputs of the accumulator. So accumulator is a 16-bit register, so the 16 inputs of the accumulator come from adder and the logic circuit. The circuit has 3 sets of inputs. One set of 16 bits come from outputs of the accumulator. So as I discussed, that the accumulator gets the input from the address and logic. So the adder and logic consists of 3 inputs. So the one input come from accumulator itself, because they are used to implement register micro operations such as complement AC and shift AC. So to perform shifting accumulator and shift complement of AC, so the accumulator output is connected as an input for the adder and logic. I think so you understood that the output of the accumulator is connected to A and L, because to perform the register micro operations that such as complement and shift AC. And another set of 16-bit inputs come from the data register DR. The inputs from data register and accumulator are used for arithmetic and logical micro operations. The inputs which are coming from the data register and the accumulator will perform the arithmetic and logical micro operations. As we discussed that the input coming from the accumulator will perform register shift micro operations, but here the input which is coming from the data register and the input coming from the accumulator both will combine and perform the arithmetic and logical micro operations, such as add dr to ac or and dr to ac. Between dr and ac there will be AND operation, between dr and ac there will be add operation. Next, the result of an addition is transferred to the accumulator. So the result is transferred to the accumulator. Accumulator gets the input and accumulator gets the result of the given micro operation. So, and the AND carry out of the addition is transferred to the flip flop E, which is extended AC bit. Here, when we are performing arithmetic micro operations, there will be some carry or a borrow. So that extra bit has to be transferred to this flip flop, which is named as E. So I think so you understood it. A third set of 8-bit inputs come from the input register I and PR. So the another set input to the adder and logic will come from input register to get the input operation that has to be performed, and that input operations will be fetched inside the memory and they will get executed, and the data is sent to the accumulator and the output is transferred to the outer register and the output will be transferred to the user. I think so you understood the whole process which is going inside the common bus. Now let us discuss an example. For example, the two micro operations transfer the data from accumulator to data register and transferring the data register to accumulator can be executed at the same time. So these will executed at the same time. We discuss, as this is a common bus, every problem can be executed simultaneously, and this can be done by placing the content of AC on the bus with selection lines S2, S1, S0 equals to 100. So the selection line of AC is 4, so 4 value is 100. So by enabling 100, AC is activated, and by enabling the load signal, the input will come from the data register and transfer the content of data register through the adder and logic. So the by enabling the load signal, we will get the input from the data register to the adder and logic. So the data is transferred to the accumulator, and enabling the load input of AC all during the same clock cycle. So here we connected the clock. So when the clock is enabled, the data is transferred to the adder and logic, and adder and logic transfers the data to the accumulator, and accumulator sends the output to the register. So the data from the data register is transferred to the accumulator, and the two transfers occur upon the arrival of the clock pulse transition at the end of the clock cycle. Here same as here I discussed, same clock cycle. Here from the data from the data register to the accumulator and from the accumulator to the data register occurs at the same clock cycle upon the arrival of the clock pulse transition at the end of the clock cycle. Here there will be a clock pulse transition when the clock cycle was ended. So after the data from data register is transferred to the accumulator and from the accumulator to the data register, so at the end of that operation there will be a clock pulse transition that shows that the operation is completed. So I think so you understood the whole concept of 16-bit common bus, where the register transfer the data from one register to the other and perform the logical and micro operations. If you have any doubts, comment below. I will message you, and I think so you will share to your friends, and If you have any ideas that I have to make videos on that concept, you may comment below. Thank you for everyone.